I think our Dallas County Child Welfare Unit needs to be completely independent from the rest of the state welfare system, that we need a director that is not under the local or the regional office of the state welfare, and needs to be oriented in the direction of protective care and not just general welfare. And all of these people that are in the state welfare system are generally oriented in the direction of welfare and not the protective child care. I say that the Child Welfare Unit, Dallas County Child Welfare Unit, is bound in bureaucracy, and it's making our organization here ineffective, and we're not getting the services that we contracted for in 1965. Our department has deteriorated over the years to a point that I feel like that it was better operated when we, as the county, was running it without the state assistance.
But as a philosopher, I'm interested in the ways that man has conceptualized nature. And I feel we've neglected nature, much to our peril, in fact, because having neglected to think about nature in the various ways you could conceptualize it, we then go on to treat nature without a great deal of, let's say, tact. We create an environmental crisis.
Will the establishment of a park in the Big Thicket actually make people think more about the wilderness, or will it just bring tourists and tourist cabins?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. In the first place, I think that the Big Thicket is a perfect natural schoolhouse. If we want to teach our children about nature and man's dependency on nature, then the Big Thicket is as good a place in the United States as any to do so, and far superior to most. The second point is that they're going to establish in this park a large Big Thicket environmental area. And the purpose of this is to leave the land open for multiple use, some for primitive wilderness, some for lumbering and farming. But the state of Texas is being asked to build recreational areas directly around this environmental area, so that you can bring tourists in to enjoy the Big Thicket, and yet they will be around the outskirts of it, and some areas will be protected.
I think it's great. We're looking forward to it with a great deal of enthusiasm. We think it's going to be to our advantage to start the season against a great team like the Minnesota Vikings. We feel that after you have a great year like we had last year, why it's always very much of a concern of a coach and coaching staff and an organization to make sure that your squad is ready and not fat-headed maybe or complacent about the upcoming season. From this standpoint, I don't think there's any way in the world that we can go into a season with that kind of an attitude, and as a result, it should be good for us, and I think it'll be a great football game.
Are you going to change your strategy in any way in view of the new schedule?
Oh, we might do a few things differently than we did in the Super Bowl game, but we will have seen them play 6 exhibition games, preseason games, just like they will have seen us play 7 prior to that game, and so I'm sure that we'll have to make some adjustments over the game that we played last year in the Super Bowl game.
while we have police officials to make assignments, police officers, that our concern is for all the people in the city of Dallas, and that our officers are trained to perform as police officers in all areas of the city, regardless of the officer's color, or regardless of the neighborhood in which he's assigned.
Chief, what this group is asking, isn't this segregationist in itself?
Well, this is kind of a pointed question. If you're inclined to make that judgment, then it's yours.
Or I'm talking about putting blacks, patrolmen with a total black community rather than integrating the forces and the community.
Well, you see, you get criticisms from both sides. And if you totally assign Negro officers to Negro communities, then some people would raise the question, why don't you let them be full-fledged police officers and patrol all communities? And then if you assign them the other way, you get the other feedback. So, you know.
Thank you.
This petition was read by the two officers that were involved, and they indicated a desire, after reading the petition, to be moved from their present or then current beat assignments. And they were moved. Had these officers not been inclined to change their beat assignments, in all probability my answer to these people this morning would have been a different one. I tried to explain to this group that we can't run a police department by committee.
Mr. Lewis, can we look forward to more cutback or curtailment of mail delivery, such as possibly a 5-day delivery in lieu of 6?
I'm afraid that the current postal administration does have this in mind, to cutting back to 5-day-a-week delivery in the rural areas, perhaps cutting back to even a greater extent than that. They've already engaged in many cities in an experiment on only partial delivery on Saturdays to some areas. They already have curtailed the collection service, and perhaps that doesn't mean much to the average person. But if you drop a piece of mail in the corner box or any box, and that mail is not picked up for 24 or 36 hours, it's being curtailed, it's being delayed. And so many of these things have already happened.
This is a emergency shelter where you bring children there and you clean them up and doctor them and immediately placed in the foster homes. It's not a home. It was never meant for a home. So if there's 77 people out there, then the child welfare unit is not doing their job.
I don't think LEAD should play any role in politics. There are many people who would like to think that LEAD has played a role in politics, and to a certain extent possibly it has. My personal thinking is that LEAD should be dedicated to excellence in school board members and should try to draw its support from all economic or racial or geographic sections of town without labels and without politics.
Any specific programs you would like to initiate?
No, absolutely none, other than the search and encouragement of outstanding persons within this community to run and serve on the school board.
Rogers is 34 years old and has 3 children. He's the president of Texas Industries. He says he really doesn't have enough time to be president of LEAD, but he wants it because he thinks he can do a good job. The LEAD membership believes the same thing. For Channel 8 News on the Move, this is Jess Brown in Dallas.
Now, you said some people expressed a concern about the lights and cameras, but you didn't say who they were.
I did go out to the chamber later, and I believe Mr. Tyson has indicated that there was some concern about the manner of the setup of the meeting.
Well, I talked with Mr. Tyson and with Mr. Price just minutes ago. They expressed no feeling about the lights one way or the other, and the reason they hadn't been here was strictly because no people had showed up. The meeting was not ready to get underway. You were the only commissioner who expressed some feeling about the lights. Is there any significance in that?
Well, my comment is, first, you noticed that they weren't here either. That is, the other commissioners. Likewise, the people who were scheduled to come and talk with us weren't here either.
You were the only commissioner who expressed concern about the lights and TV coverage. Is there any significance in that?
I like TV, and the coverage doesn't concern me. I believe that it did influence the people who were standing here. The bright lights are obvious, and I have a feeling that this is probably the reason that they didn't come in.
No, that is not correct. We feel very strongly that we want the news media to bring to the citizens of this community the findings of our committee, so that the citizens of Dallas County will be aware of what is going on. The reason that the meeting did not come off is because we did not wish to have a confrontation with the personnel, the administration really, of the State Department of Public Welfare and end up in indulging in perhaps name-calling or justifying either the committee's findings or the lack of services on the part of the welfare department, and then lose sight of the fact that we are in an important area that pertains to the welfare of this community.
Really, we enjoyed our stay here in Dallas very much, and but we have enjoyed great success in Kansas City. We think it's a great city, and of course the fact that we have won consistently and also artistically, and also have done so well at the gate. Everybody knows, I'm sure, that we've sold 70,000 season tickets for next year. We definitely are very, very happy to be in Kansas City.
Any major changes on your football team this next year? Any trades in the making?
Nothing significant at this particular time. We always are looking to ways to help our football team, and if there's a chance that we can do so by making a trade, we'll certainly do so. But right now, I don't really anticipate anything drastically different with our club than existed last year.
My program for next year is to try to attract as many people interested in education to join LEAD as an organization and to work towards the major objective of LEAD, and that is to support the nomination of those members running for the school board who will promote excellence within the Dallas Independent School District. In other words, those people who on the school board have the knowledge, interest, background, and very importantly the time to serve on the school board, and who will not accept anything less than the best education possible for the citizens of Dallas.
Well, the man's name that keeps cropping up when the presidency of LEAD is talked about is Robert Rogers. He's 34 years old and has 3 children. He also has his office in this building. He's the president of Texas Industries.
I've been considering standing for election of LEAD for the presidency of LEAD for the last couple of weeks, and I've been considering it very carefully. And the way you phrased your question is one brings up a very important point in my mind, and that is the political nature in which you asked the question. I don't think LEAD should be a political organization. I think it's a group of individuals who are trying to support the nomination of the most outstanding members for the school board. And as such, I think it's rather apolitical, or should be, and that its sole purpose should be excellence in the school system through the support of excellence in school board members. But briefly, if I am elected this evening, I do believe I will say yes.
What does this increase mean to you?
It means one thing to me: we're going to have to work just a little harder to keep up with it.
You
The 1960 official figure was 679,684. These preliminary 1970 figures are 836,093. That's a pretty substantial increase for us, and certainly makes us one of the leading cities in the country on a population basis.
And of course, it means that Dallas is, this big metropolitan area, is a very attractive spot in this country, and I think we can keep on anticipating that we'll have the even greater increase in the next 10 years.
What about this issue of notes? What particularly is the item that upsets them without getting visual?
Well, they seem to be upset with the bottom half of this photograph and some other photographs on page 7 of an incident in which a man took off his clothes and walked down the streets of downtown Dallas for 3 blocks. They can't deny that it happens. They just don't want people to know about it.
The ideal in this event is it's a seesaw affair, and you're supposed to try to balance the car on the seesaw, on a teeter-totter.
What does this require, George?
Sir?
What does this require? What do you have to do?
It's just balance. It's just one of our games. You're just supposed to drive on it real slow. It just
have to drive it to a certain point until actually. Do you back up?
Yeah, you can back up.
So it's a matter of driving skill.
Right. And sense of balance.
How long have you been driving Model A, George?
I've had this one about 6.5 years.
We're driving up on this balancing device. Yeah, it's pretty good, George. You just feel it?
Yeah.
Just about. George, you're up on it. Oh, didn't quite make it.
I've said many times I'm not nearly as much interested in the size of the city as I am in the quality of life in it. I think our chore really is to see that the growth is of the right and balanced variety to give us a strong and viable community which can adjust to the ups and downs of business and industry and take everything in stride.
In the economic sense, it means that we're going to continue to have a relatively full employment. It's well known that we're in some sort of an economic slowdown across the nation now, but I think this sort of a rate of growth will mean that we'll continue to have a relatively high level of retail sales, and other economic indicators will be at a high level relative to the rest of the country. So it means we're going to have continue to have an attractive place where people want to move and bring their families.
I'm convinced, however, that mass rapid transit must be considered on a regional or state basis if we're to avoid the expensive duplication that can come from local cities and municipalities attempting to get federal funds for mass rapid transit purposes. I'm further convinced that the federal government is not going to put out much money in the form of grants until they're convinced there has been widespread hard planning by an agency or an authority that's capable of conducting these studies. I think for that reason that the Texas Turnpike Authority is in a position, for many practical reasons, to assist in mass rapid studies not only for this area but for the state. For example, we can match funds from toll revenues with matching federal funds to conduct exploratory studies, and thus save the heavy drain on the treasures of individual cities who are trying to get this exploratory study money.
The seriousness of this whole incident calls for a public hearing on the whole matter and not just a self-serving police version of what happened. We feel that what has happened is not a problem of just a certain minority or ethnic group, but more important, a problem that concerns all law-abiding citizens of our community. The mass arrest and brutalization of certain peaceful and law-abiding citizens today is a threat to everyone's personal security tomorrow if the matter goes unchecked. We strongly urge that this incident be thoroughly investigated by all appropriate agencies, the wrongdoers be brought to justice, and appropriate steps taken to assure that this never again happens in Tarrant County.
As chairman, I'm going to do what the board directs. I have no intention of trying to run this program. But I think what I would like to do is to sell the community generally on this program. I think too few people in the county know what it is all about. And they can't learn what it's all about overnight because I've been studying pretty strenuously for 2 weeks and I've only touched the surface myself. So it's a long-term job.
What about the image of the war on poverty as a whole? It probably has suffered greatly in the last few months of controversy. At least it has an image now, but it may not be the best. What are you going to do about that?
Well, I think the selling job I just mentioned is the answer to it.
Who do you have to sell most?
Oh, I think the community. First, I would like to see the business community get behind the program. Now, I think the government entities, the city and the county, there's no question, they're behind it. They know about it. We get criticism, or have in the past got criticism from them, but they're the sponsors. I expect criticism and welcome it.
What about the specific question of Ruth Jefferson, who has been in the center of much of the controversy of the board? Do you think it would help? Would you advocate her being dismissed if this would help the board?
Well, if it would help the board, I would advocate my leaving. No, seriously, this question is under investigation right now, and I'd just rather not comment upon it at all until we see the results of this investigation.